You are standing in a bathhouse in Paris. The year is 1292. Steam curls off wooden tubs. A woman scrubs her husband's back while two children splash in the corner pool. Someone floats a board across the water and sets bread and wine on top. This is not a reward reserved for nobles. This is a Tuesday afternoon in the city. Paris held 32 public bathhouses that year. Criers walked the streets at dawn shouting that the water was hot, and people got up and went. Now picture the same city 300 years later. The bathhouses stand boarded shut. Streets carry the smell of unwashed wool and old sweat. Something broke between these two pictures, and it wasn't a sudden loss of interest in being clean. Most people picture medieval Europe as filthy by default. Mud streets, rare baths, centuries without soap. The record tells a different story for a long stretch of the period, and the real collapse came later than most assume. In the 12th century, a Paris resident named Alexander Neckham wrote that he woke each morning to street vendors calling that the baths were hot. Across the river in London, the district of Southwark ran 18 separate hot baths within walking distance of each other. King Henry II had already recognized Southwark as the city's red light district back in 1161, and its bathhouses sat at the center of that reputation. These public baths were called étuis in France. Families washed together inside them, ate meals on boards laid across the tub, and treated a visit the way you might treat a night out. Soap came from animal fat mixed with wood ash. Steam rooms ran next to laundry basins in the same building. A visit combined hygiene, food, and company in one stop. Some historians trace the revival of this culture to the Crusades. Soldiers returning from the Middle East had seen cities like Cairo, Marrakesh, and Istanbul running bathhouses fed by maintained aqueducts, part of a medical tradition that took cleanliness seriously. The Cordoban physician al-Zahrawi wrote an entire chapter on soap, deodorant, and skincare recipes around the year 1000, and his encyclopedia stayed a standard textbook in European universities for the next 500 years. Whatever the exact path, bathhouses spread across France, Germany, and Bohemia through the 1200s and 1300s. Then two disasters arrived within 150 years of each other, and both landed directly on the bathhouse. The Black Death reached Europe in 1347 and killed close to half the population within 4 years. Nobody understood how plague actually spread. People noticed a pattern instead. Crowded, warm, wet rooms seemed to breed sickness faster than dry streets. A building built entirely around strangers sharing the same hot water became suspicious by association. Then, in the 1490s, syphilis appeared in Europe and moved fast through exactly the kind of close, communal contact bathhouses were built for. Physicians of the period believed hot water opened the pores of the skin, and an open pore let disease walk straight into the body. A visit to the baths, once a mark of good health, turned into a medical risk in the public imagination. The Dutch philosopher Erasmus captured the collapse in a line he wrote in 1526. 25 years earlier, he said, nothing in Brabant matched the popularity of the public baths. By the time he wrote those words, none were left, because what he called the new plague had taught people to avoid them. Morality piled on top of medicine. Southwark's baths, like many across Europe, doubled as brothels, earning the nickname stews. Through the 1300s and 1400s, local authorities mostly looked away, treating the arrangement as a release valve for young men in the city. By the 1500s, that tolerance ran out. Reformers targeted mixed bathing as indecent, and city councils shut the buildings down one after another. Cost worked against the bathhouses too. Heating enough water for a communal tub took fuel, and firewood grew more expensive as forests around European cities thinned across the centuries. A business that once ran on cheap would become harder to justify once the price kept climbing every decade. By the 1600s, the shift was complete. Historians call the 2 centuries that followed a washing moratorium. People wiped themselves with cloths soaked in wine or vinegar. They changed linen shirts more often, on the theory that fresh fabric pulled dirt away from the skin without the risk that came with water. Perfume covered whatever the dry cloth left behind. This routine, not weekly bathing, is the image most people carry when they picture the Middle Ages, even though it belongs to the Renaissance and the centuries after it. The timeline runs backward from the myth. 12th and 13th century Europeans built a bathing culture around public bathhouses, cheap soap, and hygiene folded into daily life. plague, a new venereal disease, and a moral crackdown erased that culture within 200 years. The dry, perfumed version of history is the one that survived in memory. The wet, social one came first.